All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Alice Ollstein. Alice is a journalist for Free Speech Radio News, which you can find at fsrn.org. You can also find her on Twitter at Alice Ollstein. Alice, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Sure, my pleasure.
So, Alice, just the other day, a major report on sexual assault was released by the Pentagon, and it is shocking and frankly horrific. Tell us, what was actually in the report?
Well, the report shows that even though they've been saying for several years now in the military that this is a priority to really crack down on sexual assault, to have zero tolerance, to really make it known that it's not okay and do better education and everything. Despite all of that, sexual assault in the military is up a great deal, by several thousand from the last time they released the data for 2011. And so they released the results of this anonymous survey they do and found that more than 26,000 service members experienced sexual assault in 2012 alone, and that's up from 19,000 the year before. And then, so they have that anonymous survey data, and then they compare that to how many people actually reported the assault against them. And that is a much smaller number, drastically smaller. It's about 13% of all the sexual assaults that actually are reported. And I know I'm getting into a lot of numbers here and it can be confusing, but I sort of imagine it as an upside-down pyramid. So at the top, it's all the assaults that actually happened. And then it gets narrower to the ones that get reported. Then it's even narrower to the ones that get investigated. All this data was released this week. So only 1,300 were investigated. And then several hundred were thrown out. The Pentagon said that the accusations were false or they couldn't find any evidence, and they threw those out. And a much narrower number went to a court-martial, and just 238 people were convicted. So that's the little tip of the pyramid, and then even fewer were sentenced to any sort of prison time. A lot of times they're given administrative punishments.
No, and I think the pyramid is actually the really way to look at it. So again, let's just go over these numbers again. According to this blind survey, 26,000 sexual assaults happened, and I would almost wager to say it's probably more than that. But that is the ones that admitted in this survey. But I would imagine you could probably up that to a certain amount by people who wouldn't even say that even in a blind survey. So that's 26,000. Yeah, so it's 26,000. It narrows it to only 3,400 were actually reported of the 26,000. Of that, 1,300 of the 3,400 were investigated, and only 238 were actually had any type of conviction at all.
Right.
Unbelievable.
And what has been catching the attention of Congress is that even when there's a conviction, in the very few instances where they've make it all the way to a conviction, that conviction can get overturned for no reason under the military's current justice system. A commander in a unit can throw out a jury's finding that found someone guilty of sexual assault or reduce their sentence that they were given by that jury. And that process is getting a lot of attention now, and there's been some bills introduced to change that.
Unbelievable. So let's discuss. We'll go into that a little more in a couple minutes. Let's discuss some of the reasons, because again, I'm saying this entirely not at all to blame the victims, because if someone is sexually assaulted, there's a lot of trauma involved, and there might be, and I'm not going to even go to the place where why this person didn't come forward, but there actually are. In addition to trauma, many reasons that victims actually do not actually bring the charges, and obviously, when you look at the pyramid, that it's about that. So let's discuss some of what actually goes on when and what are some of the actual things that happen that would discourage assault victims from coming forward.
So I've interviewed some survivors of military sexual assault, and there have been a lot in the media lately and testifying before Congress, and they say that under the system, you are required to report to someone who may be the perpetrator or may know the perpetrator intimately. They say, your unit is like a family. And one woman I talked to said it would be like if your brother raped you and you had to report it to your father, because that person, is so biased that they can't make an impartial judicial official decision on what to do about it. And that's a pretty upsetting analogy, but that is the one that this woman used. Additionally, they said this woman said she did report, and it ended up coming back to hurt her career, and she was barred from advancing in a certain way because she sought counseling, and they labeled her as unstable and unwell for seeking counseling, even though she has the right to seek counseling after being a sexual assault survivor.
So that the higher ups at the military, not only do you might get retaliation from the people above you, and also from your fellow soldiers, and that's a legitimate thing where they might be ostracized and face all types of harassment from their fellow soldiers and from the higher ups. Mm-hmm. Also, further up than that, it actually can potentially ruin their careers because it's going to go in their file that they went to actually get treatment for being sexually assaulted, and therefore they're not strong enough because they had to actually get what you have to get. You actually have to deal with this issue. That is unbelievably sick on every single solitary level.
And this has been going on a long time, but it's really getting a lot more public attention now. A lot more people are coming forward. Although you can see from the numbers that the numbers in the anonymous survey went way up, and the numbers of how many were reported just went up a little bit. So clearly there's more work to do to make people feel comfortable reporting. And one of those measures is that they want the commander to be taken out of the process altogether and have it entirely be decided by, have an independent court, independent jury take a look at the evidence and make a decision.
And so when this happens in the military, it is entirely it's handled within the military. Are there other? I mean, that's pretty much the only someone who's a victim really doesn't have any other access to any type of justice necessarily, do they? It's all pretty much handled. It's all handled in house.
Yes, and that's been discussed as a possible change to allowing people to bring civilian charges.
Are they currently barred from doing such things, or is there any legal instance right now where that happens, or how is that currently structured? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of all the details, but I do know that in order to get health benefits and to be able to continue in a military career, they do have to go through the military.
Unbelievable. I'm talking to Alice Ollstein from Free Speech Radio News, FSRN.org. Let's discuss again the idea of these generals overturning convictions. In fact, there's actually a fairly high-profile one that's actually a Lieutenant General Susan Helms was actually denied promotion over the fact. So let's discuss that a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, so this woman was recently nominated for a position by the White House, and some senators are putting a hold on her confirmation because a few years ago, this woman overturned a aggravated sexual assault conviction from someone in the Air Force. She said she reviewed the jury's findings and didn't think she agreed with them, and so she overturned the conviction. And this just highlights what is possible. Now, at a hearing this week, Air Force officials, when grilled about this, said, it's very rare that this happens. But the survivors and the advocates that I've spoken to say it doesn't matter that it's rare. The fact that it can happen at all discourages people from even trying to get any sort of justice after they're attacked.